Right, take 25. Hello, welcome to the lesson. The colours I'm using today: white, titanium white, phthalo blue, Payne's grey, possibly sap green, and red ochre. But I'm not sure yet. I might even try and do one that where I don't use those colours. So let's see what happens. I'm thinking of a sort of mountainy type thing, but with interesting colours in the sky. And I might even add a bit of cadmium yellow and cadmium orange. So first things first, bit of white, bit of blue, bit of Payne's grey. Right, so there's a few Turner paintings where he put in dark mountains next to the sea. So maybe there might even be sea in this. We'll see how it goes. So first thing first, let's just put in some blue. And the thing you'll notice about the blue, first of all, is how really steep there. You'll notice that landscapes will start to appear even though you're not painting a landscape. Make shapes. I hope the sound's working today. I've carefully positioned the microphone so that it is away from my feeble beard. There's obviously excellent competition today in beard growth. Anyway, but if you have a slight beard and you wear these microphones too close, you get a rasping sound every now and then. So hopefully it's coming over nice and clear though. Okay, so I've put a load of Payne's grey on this now. You can see that's quite dark. If I put that there, that will instantly start to bring the darker shapes forward so that they are in front of the blue in the background. It's not immediately obvious yet, but it will be. So we could put something down there like so. Who knows what it is? I have no idea. But this is a really good way to start a painting because it takes away the anguish. Don't want any anguish. We want something to appear without even thinking about it. The thing about a fantasy type landscape, when I finish painting, I'll try and call up a picture on my computer to give you an idea of what I was thinking when I did this. By the way, before I go on, and it doesn't matter if you all speak at once. I can edit it if too many people speak, but I'll tell you what, I'll ask one person a question. So you can then unmute and tell me what you want. Okay. What sort of sky do you want? Do you want a reddish sky or a bluish sky? How about, let's start with parsley. Reddish sky or a bluish sky?
Red.
Red, okay.
Please.
Okay. Any particular red? Or shall I just choose? Let's have
Yeah, some red ochre usually is good.
red ochre.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, let's see what happens when I do that. So I'm going to just throw it in now. So the good thing about this, you see, is if this goes wrong, it's your fault. It's your fault, not mine. Okay, clean brush. In fact, never used before. Getting the hairs out. Okay. For the new people, when you have these cheap brushes, you may, if I hold it against something dark, you might see it. But if you do that with a new brush, you can see, possibly, the hairs that are flying out the top, just by doing that. And you want them flying out before you actually get the paint on them. There's another one. Oh my goodness, this is... Okay, I see why this one was cheap now. Everything's coming out. But I'll stop there, otherwise it will go on forever. Okay, so red ochre. Red ochre is brown. So if you're not mixing it with anything else, and at the moment I'm not, I'm just going to put it straight on there, then you have to go a little bit cautiously, but let's see what happens. So obviously I'm working down to the blue. It would be silly of me to try and do that up to the blue because I can't see behind the brush. So you turn the brush so that you can actually see where the business end is pointing. And don't worry about it mixing a little bit with the blue. That will make it interesting and textury. That's certainly not a word, is it? When I was a student, it took me a long time actually to figure out what the tutors were trying to get me to do, you know, by making things meld together. Because I was sort of, you know, young, I was 16 when I went to college. And I had it in my head that, you know, to paint something, you had to use a little brush, even if you're painting an enormous sky, you know, a little brush to sort of gradually work across the sky. It took me a long time to figure out that you don't need that. And also to understand why the tutors kept saying, make the transition between the land and the sky interesting by pushing them together. Right, so now, this is the stage in a painting when it's slightly iffy. I always call this the make or break. You're a new painter and you start doing this and it turns out, you know, out of control. That's when people will possibly give up and take up a different vocation. But you have to work through that. Okay, so what I'm doing there is, you see, you can put a hint of a tint of a reddish color. It doesn't mean to say that you have to take this color, mix white to get a tint. You can just sort of go by what is appearing on the board. So you can break the color down literally the way I just did it. Let me just get rid of that hair, get off. But on this one, I'm going to add just a little bit of white, just there. Something for later. And I'm going to put some just there because the colors will mix together quite nicely. Okay, and back to a little bit more reddish color. And a bit more paper. There is a hint of red in the sky. Right. Let's see what happens now when I start to push the blue and the grey back up into the sky. I've got to start thinking now about, because I'm sort of committed to some kind of mountain type thing here. Although I might change it on this side, I might lose that, but I quite like that. That's okay. Then now I'm going to start pushing the two colours together. And making, hopefully, interesting shapes appear against the skyline. And a little bit of the slope there. Okay, so I have another question for someone. Let's see who else can answer this one. Sort of remember all the names. Let's have Okay, Ari, do you want there to be trees or do you want there to be water coming through? Or both?
Water.
You'd like water?
If there are to be trees, they should be very small and like fading in the background.
Okay. So let's see what happens. First of all, okay, so there's something that could suggest a sort of a tree-ish shape there. And if I'm going to have water coming through from somewhere, the first thing I'm going to do is just add a bit of light in there. And the reason I do that is so that I don't have to pile white paint onto blue, because it would become a never-ending battle. You take the paint off so that you can put paint on, but still keep an interesting tone. Right. Now, so the water can come from over there and head towards us. Now, the thing about water is what we don't want is we don't want one side of it like that and one side like that. That's really boring. But the other thing we don't want, just put some color back there. The other thing we don't want is what I call the riverside crocodiles. Okay, sounds silly, but you'll understand as soon as you see them. So imagine the water stream is coming down here. That is the beginning of a waterside crocodile. Now, people often do this. They will have water coming down, they'll have the water going in, then it will come out, then it will go in again, and then it will come out, then it will go in again. So you get several of these waterside crocodiles. Some people will do 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the other side they'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, but move down slightly so that the ones that are sticking out here sort of notch into the water there, if that makes sense. So if I can show you. So in other words, they would have water there, they'd have a little crocodile there, and then the next crocodile would fit into that shape. Right, so anyway, I don't know why I'm showing you. Well, I suppose, yeah, showing you what not to do may also help. But so they'd have one there, and they'd have one here, right? Now that, it just gets a bit tedious. Because what you want is the same thing that you want with skies and trees, and that is randomness. So, and also keep an eye on perspective. Okay, so if I want water coming down there, I'm just going to shove a bit of white on for now, just to sort of make it obvious. Let's just have a bit of light there. And you see how just doing that makes interesting shapes. Hopefully, just realized I've started painting and I don't have a bag to put my dirty paper in. So I'm going to have to, what am I going to do? Okay, bear with me for 1 second. There's a bag. Should be okay. Okay, right. So we've got water, and I'm going to shove in a load of tree shapes to give it a little bit of form. So for that, and as we're sort of going mysterious, I'm going to keep these dark and strange. And you notice how, depending on how fast you move the brush, all the different textures that you can get, so that you'll end up with detail. Ever have one of those days when everything goes a little bit sideways? Okay. Right. So let's see, what should we do over here? Let's just build in some rocky shapes up the side of the mountain. This, I think this image is a little bit of a leftover from our recent trip to the Pyrenees. If you don't know what the Pyrenees, if you don't know the Pyrenees, have a Google and have a little look. It's, I suppose, Europe's answer to the Rockies in a way. It's quite like the Alps in Switzerland, but you know, it's the border between France and Spain, and it was a very interesting trip. And we're still looking into the idea of moving down that way. Problem is just finding the right house. Okay, now a lot of this painting I'm doing with some Payne's grey. Funnily enough, you can see quite a lot of blue there, but there's an awful lot of Payne's grey going into this. So this is all very loose down this bank, down this side of the river here, because you've got to start loose. Okay. Interesting. I'm gonna do something about that up there. I don't like that hill. I quite like that slope over the other side there. But this one, now this will be interesting. Let's talk about making trouble for yourself. I'm just going to blend these two together, because I know that these colours will go, and I also know that deep down inside, doesn't matter what you do in the sky, it'll work. Won't necessarily work immediately, but it will work, because those colours just fit together nicely. Bring a bit of blue over there as well, because this is not the final sky. Obviously, it's going to have white on it. I might even put a hint of a building up there somewhere. There's a bit of blue over there. Thing is, not to be afraid of the paint. Doesn't matter how much you, well, I suppose the technical word would be to muck it up. It doesn't matter what you do. You can always get through it. Let's have something there for a bit later on. Something I sometimes do ask people. I don't know what percentage of people find skies difficult. Here's a question for somebody. Who doesn't find skies difficult? Is there anyone that finds them quite easy?
Hi, Stuart. This is Raghu here. I thought skies and clouds were the most difficult things to do till the first time I saw you do this thing of laying the white paint and the blue paint, and then, well, like you're doing right now,
And then
and then smoothing over. And I said, hey, I can do this.
Exactly. That's good. That's the way it should be, because you know, I've always had this thing that what some I think it's quite a well-known saying, but it just sort of resonates with me a little bit. What one person can do, so can another. Words to that effect. You just got to sort of do it really. I mean, although there are exceptions, you know, I mean, I'm never going to be a concert pianist, but it's probably because I'd like to be one, but I don't want the bother of learning. But if you're here because you're interested in painting, then you know you're halfway there. The fact that you have the interest usually means that, you know, with the right sort of encouragement, you will be able to do it. And the best way to learn anything is to see somebody do it, particularly with painting.
Over 2 months, all I have done is watch you and then try to do exactly what you do. And my friends tell me I'm a genius. Of course, they are friends, so they flatter me. But I can personally say that the improvement that I have made from not knowing, from never having lifted a paintbrush in my life, to producing things that I'm happy with, is unbelievable. So if I chose you out of all the choices I had on Patreon and Skillshare and Domestika, it's because of this approach of allowing yourself to discover things in the painting, and I'm just loving it.
Yeah, just look for the shapes, because they'll always be there. As long as you're pushing a brush around, shapes will appear. It's just a knack of getting to know the best shapes to keep, and you know, the ones to ignore and the ones to keep. And you know, just don't be afraid. As I always say to people, what's the worst that can happen? You know, if the painting doesn't go right, it doesn't mean to say that your tax will go up. It's not related to anything, really. It's just, you know, all it is paint. What should we do down there? Let's have something really dark there to start with. So, you know, when I got a lot of paint on the brush, if I move slowly, I can make a solid color. If I move quickly, I can take paint away and get some light in there. And even that, just that quick movement there, produces something that happens between that dark and the light. Don't worry about the bottom edge of it. That can be changed with a piece of paper, because once you start to see interesting bits, let me just try and explain that. When you start to see interesting things happening, like that little bit of light there, I'll just exaggerate it a bit more. Okay, so that's now lighter. And I know that if I do this at the bottom edge, I can sort of extend that interest. Also pull a bit of that white paint across there. So suddenly now we've got rocks and we've got a sort of turn around the corner there. Don't know what's going down the bottom here yet, but I'll probably think of something. Just get a little bit more. In fact, I'll tell you what, if in doubt, you're doing something mysterious, add darkness. If you have darkness, people imagine all kinds of things in the shadows. That's why people don't like the dark, I think. You know, they imagine things in the shadows. So maybe capitalize on that and use that. I don't know what, it's not fear really, is it? What is it? It's a sort of natural reaction to the dark. You imagine things in the darkness. So start imagining things in the darkness. Just have a hint of the shape. So for instance, at the moment, we've got this sort of weird blue grass stuff here, whatever it is. But it doesn't have to be grass. We just get a bit more grey. Whoops. Okay. So this brush that I'm using, it's the same one all the way through pretty well. All it's had on it really is some phthalo blue and Payne's grey. Not much oil, funnily enough. I use more oil up here and to get these sort of effects down the side of this hill. But for the solids, it's just basically paint straight out the tube. Just make it a shape of something going up the hill there. So build it up a little bit. Don't know what it is yet, but it's growing on the side of that hill. Have a little bit down there. Sorry about the knocking. Maybe that will do it better. And when you're working like this, working quickly, you know, it gives you gives a spontaneity to your picture. A bit more dark down there. Let's have a bit of structure. Let's say, don't know what it's going to be yet. Probably rocks. Just put a hard edge on the top edge. Again, slow movement of the brush to get the paint to stick. A little bit of light left on there, because why take off something if it starts to work? You know, you could say, oh, well, I like that, but I'll paint it. In other words, make the dark shape, get some blue and white and start painting. That's the hard way to do it. Use the shapes that the paint makes. Look for the accidents. Let's have something, you know, if you're really feeling adventurous, just put a shape on the cliff like that. It's either a woman walking this way with a very long dress on, or it's, I don't know, it could be something else, who knows? Just adding a little shape to it can turn it into all kinds of stuff. There's a man with a tricorn hat, broodily looking that way. All kinds of stuff starts to appear. Don't know what, I might leave it, I might take it off, don't know yet. But never be in a hurry to change things, you know, just sort of see how it goes. I don't usually add people to my paintings because you know, it's all about nature more than people. But anyway, maybe I should have someone in there, you know, just someone standing next to them now walking away, you know, or maybe that's a tree. Don't know. Could be a tree. It all turns into something if you experiment. No idea what these are, but they're down there. So maybe it's just the line of top of the cliff and we're looking down across. Who knows? And I'll tell you what, while we're being exciting, I have something dark there and something dark there. Because I know that I'll need it in a minute. But maybe I'll do a little bit of the dry brushwork on the sky before I go much further. But before we do that, let's get some mysterious places in some of these shadows. Let's have something there. Not awfully mysterious, but it's a beginning. Right, and a little bit more white. It's difficult. I normally avoid water, and there I go putting water on. So let's, when I've done the sky, I'll ask another question about what to do in certain parts of it. Like, do we need a hint of a building? What sort of building? When was it built? What was it made from? All that sort of stuff. Right, just gonna get rid of that light down there for now. So just putting a tone in. Another thing they used to say at college is, you know, kill the white, get rid of the white. And there's a lot to be said for it, because it starts to, you know, it gives you more of a feeling of reaching a final point. Another shape there. Right, so a brush that's never been used before. I've got one. Oh, no, I could use that one. A little bit crisp, but never mind. Okay, so the sky. Let's see what we get. It's going to make a lot of banging noises, I'm afraid. So magic sky. Let's see what it produces. stuff something behind here if I can. That's good, right. Okay. So again, you see, this sky is still at the stage where it doesn't really matter what happens. I'm sort of blurring it a little bit, but I'll be adding more white in a minute. That's not too bad. Let's have a little bit more whatever is on the brush. So I'm not really worried about mixing the color on the palette here. I know I've got the red on the brush and I've got some blue on there. And the more I use it on the sky like this, the more the colors mix together. And it's all very harmonious. You know, it's worth remembering this. You know, you think that when you're painting a sky, you know, white, keep saying, you know, stop saying that. People tend to think of, you know, blue and white and a bit of gray, but there's no reason why it shouldn't have brown in it. And even other colors, although if I was going to add any other colors to this, probably at this stage now, I'll let it dry first. I could experiment with a little bit of cadmium yellow maybe, but not sure I will today, because, well, I'll tell you why, because I have basically an hour to paint, hour and a bit. It's never that strict, really. If anything does go wrong, big time wrong, I'd need time to sort of fix it. So I won't push the envelope too far. So I've got that red showing over the cliff there, the other side of the cliff. I quite like that. I'm just going to try an experiment. It's not a complicated experiment. It just involves a piece of paper. Usually, I say around at this stage, you know, when I finish this for the new people, I will take a photograph with my Nikon or Nikon, which will I'll share with you, and then you'll see the true colors, because Zoom mashes up images quite well. Okay, we've got a sort of headland over there. You don't want these shapes in a sky, so the edges of those, they need to be blended away. And you've got to be a little bit careful, because I quite like the shape of the rock there. It doesn't really matter if I push it the wrong way, because I can just go over it again. But I just want to get rid of that weird angle in the sky. That will be okay in a moment. Let's try something else. Let's try a small brush, just pulling it away slightly. Okay, so would anybody like a hint of a building? Could be a castle, or if you're from the Americas, it would be castle, or the north of England, it would be a castle, but from where I come from, it's a castle. I could stick a castle in there somewhere. So who's gonna tell me whether they want a castle or not? How about William? Do you want a castle, William? I'll take that silence as possibly William is too busy painting, or if you're working on your tablet, I know they're not easy things to operate. I'll think about the castle idea for a moment. How about James in New Zealand? Do you want a castle? You'll have to unmute, I guess. Right, either my sound's not working or nobody wants a castle.
Stuart?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a problem with getting people to unmute several people in the chat. Some have said no, some have said ruined castle.
okay,
So it could be that they can't get off mute.
yeah, okay, no, that's fair enough. I'm going to do a ruined castle. Okay, and whoops. Question is, where do I put my castle? Let me just tidy this bit of rock up first before I go on to that. There's something there. Who knows what it is? Fantasy land this. So we just have a bump down there on the end of the headland. A little bit of darkness there. All right, castle. I've got a castle brush here somewhere. Oh, I know. Let's try this. Okay, this is a distant castle palette knife. It may work, it may not. Supposing we had a distant castle up there, some kind of structure.
You're gonna spoil it, Stuart.
I have already, because it's picked up a bit of white there, but we'll.
This is William. No, I think it would add. I think it'll add some interest, Stuart. I was trying to unmute, but I couldn't before.
Oh, that's all right. I figured.
Be interesting.
Well, if we're going this far, you might as well throw in a couple dragons.
Did you say a couple of dragons? Funny you should say that. I used to draw dragons a lot. I'm not going to do it today, but maybe I'll show you in the future. But yeah, okay. So I've got. Let's see what we can do. Oh, I forgot to ask. Do you want 14th century or 15th century? That's not a serious question. Okay. Now, this will be fun, depending on your concept of fun, of course. I don't usually go for detail nowadays, but that's probably all you're going to get there. Oh, I don't know. Once I start, there's no stopping me. This is just turning into more of a fun painting rather than a serious painting, I think. But anyway, few things, suggesting things that aren't really there. Well, there's a hint of a something. That's a hint of a something. And that's probably as far as that something will go. So back to the sky, and then I'll work on the foreground a bit more down that area. And see what we can do. Before I get to it, I'm going to put a little bit of light there. I think I might need that. And I think possibly a hint of something there. That's for me to, the reason I do these things is it's something for me to put something against. In other words, if I break that line with a few dark shapes, it will suggest stuff happening that of course isn't really there. Let's see, a bit more sky. Right, palette knife. Nice lump of white, and I'll try and keep this away from the cliffs now, so that I can have, I can be sort of more loose with it without worrying about ruining anything. Of course, it's not really ruined, as you know. It just means you get an opportunity to do something else. And another thing for everyone, not just newbies, but when I do this, right, I'm not taking any care whatsoever. I'm just doing that. In other words, all I'm doing is applying paint. And I think the trick is to, I don't know what the trick is. How do I explain the trick? Well, first of all, don't worry, but the trick is to see some kind of balance that you know is going to work. In other words, you wouldn't put all the cloud just there. You've got to have it, it's got to be connected to some other part of the sky. Otherwise, it becomes just too isolated. And it'll look, if it's isolated, it will look at it just plonked on rather than carefully engineered. Okay. Right, so I put the white on, so now I'm just going to do a little bit of that. Now, when you do that, streaks will appear. I don't think you're seeing them, but there are streaks, but you don't worry about them because they go away after a while, as long as you keep remembering to wipe your brush. Okay. And you have to admit, it doesn't get, skies don't get any easier than that. I think, just as a point of interest, I'll just tell you about something from my college days. When I first went to college, one of our tutors, a guy called Jeff Bridges, he was quite famous. He was a calligrapher. And if ever you use some washing powder in the past, there was, in England, I don't know whether it was the same in America, but there was Daz, Omo, OMO, Fairy Snow, what's the other one? Daz, Omo, something else. Can't remember. Anyway, he did all the lettering. He was the calligrapher who designed all those logos. And I think he worked for Lever Brothers at the time. And what was it? He said, you know, I get at least one of these every, oh yeah, I remember now. First lesson, he taught us package design. So they would give us a brief, or he would give us a brief, and he'd say, right, you lot of hairy hippies, I want you to design, of course, in those days, even the teachers smoked in the class. I said, I want you to design a packet of cigarettes. So we were left to it, and you had the entire term. In England, it's a term. I suppose it's semester in America, and you'd think, oh God, they want that done in I don't know how many weeks it was. How on earth are we supposed to do that in 6 weeks? And so we'd do it, and he would criticize what we're doing and give us a bit of guidance every now and then, and you know, that sort of stuff. And it wasn't till I left college that you realize that's not the real world. The real world is, right, you've got to design, supposing it was the same product, which it wouldn't be nowadays, not many people do that. So, you know, design cigarette packets, but it would be design a cigarette packet, or let's say a perfume box, and you've got to turn it around by tomorrow. That whole idea of turning around a design by tomorrow just was too much to bear sometimes. You know, how on earth are you going to do that? I mean, good grief, man, how do you expect me to do that? So after years and years and years of doing that sort of thing, that's why now I can bang out a sky really quickly, and you can do it as well. What I'm doing here, you can do. There's not a mystery. So if you think, wow, you know, how am I going to do that sky in those few minutes? Well, I keep saying, you know, don't I? The thing is just to do it. Just get the paint on. You've got to get it from the tube to this or a brush and on there. The quicker you can get it on there, the more chance you have of success. Things will just start to happen. So in other words, things like this, you see. The reason I put that there now is because that area didn't have enough contrast in it. Okay, this has all got enough contrast going on. You've got that sort of slightly darkish tone there. You're not seeing it as dark as it really is. So, but you will when I photograph it. So, you know, design-wise, this needs something there because chances are the clouds wouldn't avoid the cliff, right? So the clouds are going to come down, and they're going to sort of occasionally just disappear behind the rocks. Oh, that's interesting. A little tornado coming off the cliff there. Let's just turn it into something else. Let's just take it up into the sky. Rather, I'm probably in the way. Rather than spend a long time trying to fix that, use the paint to your advantage. In other words, mix it a bit. Quite like that. It's a nice effect, actually. And then just blend it up in the sky. So you fix it without fretting over it. Interesting little line coming up there. See, now I could have all kinds of conniption about that, but I refuse to. So I'll just add a bit more cliff. There we are. That sort of tidies it up. And then, whoops. Here, I'm just going to pull that down a bit there. And you also probably can't see, but the brush is extremely ragged on the edge. That's what I like about these cheap brushes. You see, they add the odd little surprise that you wouldn't necessarily have put in because of the shape. It just things just appear. A little bit of a line there, quite like that. Yeah, why not? Okay, so what have we got there? Now look, things that we don't want, things we don't want. We don't want that blue line hanging down there. So I can either wipe it off, or I can just sort of go over it like so and just change the color of it just a little bit and turn that into something. I know I've got a little bit of white on the edge of the brush there, so I quite like the effect that it has. It may, instead of things just being duotone, in other words, two tones of blue, you add another dimension to it, and it sort of just adds interest, really. So that was just a bit of scumbling up there. I don't know what it is. I suppose the things growing up the cliff like that. Something's got to grow up the cliff. So there it is. Now, a bit of grey. Remember these light bits that I put in here? So I can start to make that work by putting something in front of it every now and then, like so. A sort of almost magical instant effect. And all I've done is just break the line a bit and add a few dark shapes. So I have a couple there just for the heck of it. In fact, I'll tell you what I want to do. Using the unbelievable amount of paint on my hand there. Now, let's see. I think for some reason the light needs to be hitting the ground there. Not really sure why, other than it just seems right. I don't like that. So I'm going to fix that in a moment. I also don't like the way the water is avoiding these trees here. It wouldn't necessarily. So what I'll probably try, I think, is a dry palette knife. And just sort of bring it down to the tree so that it's got more of a soft transition between that and that. So let's see, what can we do? Oh, you're right, I can see there, I need to do something. I'm going to pick up a bit of that white because there's so much of it there. I'm just going to put a line against the base of the land there. That's reasonable. Okay, a bit more white. Let's bring that around here. Okay. Let's have an inlet there. Distant inlet. Do I like the inlet? It's okay. Let's see. Right, just need to squirt out a bit more white here. So, what's the? I suppose the theme of today's lesson is the same as I often do, and that's just see the struggle, as they say, is real. It's to take away the fear. It's a strange thing. I mean, I experienced it years ago. I don't tend not to get it anymore. Well, I don't. In fact, I don't get any kind of fear, and I don't fear painting in the lesson either, because I know that it'll work. Even if I was slightly nervous, I don't. You know, I think my first 2 or 3 lessons I did on Zoom, I was a little bit slightly freaked out by it. I thought, what have I let myself in for? But the more I do it, the more I really, I look forward to it rather than dread it. The dreading bit was very brief. Because I would think things like, what am I going to paint? Supposing nothing springs up in my mind, what would I do then? But so far, so good. And I always feel better when I'm painting anyway. A little bit of light catching down there. And then see what we can do over there. So a couple of speckly bits. The only reason being, why not? Speckly bits can be interesting. Like, so we got waves crashing on the rocks without painting a single wave, or actually not even painting a rock when you analyze it. What else can we do? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, I've always liked painting these little dabby trees. They're quite fun to paint, and they are literally just blobs. In your mind, the blob will become something. There's some shapes there, which who knows? I mean, what on earth are they? Bushes, or I don't know. Maybe there's people walking. I don't know. Let's avoid people. Let's have a shape there, because why not? There's a dark line here. The thing I noticed when we went to the Pyrenees was the amount of texture that you actually get on the side of a mountain. So for those of you who were here for the last lesson that I did, and I'm still trying to get the video uploaded, this one, I'm just going to dangle it in front of you very briefly, but that was a little bit of the Pyrenees. So that was the last lesson. And I think I added these trees afterwards. I can't remember now. But that gives you an idea of the Pyrenees. But the interesting thing I found with the mountains is that there's nothing simple about them. It is a mass of texture. This is not finished. I might finish it on another lesson, but yeah, there's an amount of texture that you put into just the side of a hill. You know, you can never put in too much. You can also get an effect with putting in hardly any. It sounds like a contradiction, but depends on your style of painting, I suppose. But there are times when a lot is actually good, but a lot done simply. That's quite fun. See these light bits here like that? You know, it's not very big, but it sort of cries out to have something just put in front of it. I think that's probably the only way I can explain it. I'll make another one. Let's do another one, see whether we can get a similar effect. It's something, there's a bit that I don't like. Right, okay, I don't like what's happening in there. Okay, I think that's starting to get interesting, but I think that is good. The light bits coming down there are good, but I think they need to be there too. That I think is more interesting. Yeah, structurally that looks a little bit more interesting to me. And in fact, that bottom edge of it, I can turn into, so it looks like a bit of a ledge by increasing that, using that shape up there too. So now this light area in there becomes a bit of land that is subsiding. And then the top of that edge there would probably have the odd bush or two poking up. And they're really just literally spots all around. Okay, now, is there anything that I don't like? Yes, there is. Right, got it. I see something I don't like. Okay. And it's something to do with the relationship between that and this. For that to work, these need to come up higher. I will be quite bold about it because there's a lot of paint to cover there, a lot of white to get to lose. Just to bring this slightly closer. It wasn't totally in the right plane. What else do we do? We may almost be there, actually. You'll be surprised how dark some of this is over here when you see the photograph, I think. Have a shape or two up there, just for the heck of it. Right. Okay. What else do we need to do? Right, there's something there. Right, I don't like the way the water in the distance seems to tuck in there. It's just not right. There's the cliff, thing about cliffs, they have to exude a certain strength. So I think that might improve it just to bring it forward a bit. It looked a bit floppy. And I think we should also have a little bit of texture there. It gives that a bit more structure. This is a reasonable grounding for a painting. I mean, you can take, once this is dry, you can do amazing stuff with it. You could then add green over the top and white back and all kinds of stuff. I should actually do a few follow-up lessons because I've got a whole load of boards down there of past lessons that I got the feeling I said that I would get back to, but never did. So maybe I should do that. Oh yeah, that's working. That's quite nice. What else do I want to do? Let's see what happens when we do this. Bit of simplifying. That's a lot of white paint there. But if I had a shovel, I could take some of it off. Let's have a hint of light just there. So then I think that may be it. I think of anything else I want to do. In fact, if anybody wants to say, you know, any idea they think I could introduce into it, it may be something I can't do because the paint's all so wet now, but if there's anybody that wants to, that's good. So I'm making planes. That's the idea with that. Yeah, if anyone's got any ideas about what I could do to this painting that would be possible today, keep it to the minimum. And then let's see what hear what you've got to say.
Hi, Stuart. It's
Oh,
Deborah.
Deborah. Hi.
Hi. I actually, I love that. The only thing I could think of, because I think the sky is amazing, is if you look toward maybe middle of the sky, right of center, just and back up a little, not a lot of contrast there, maybe a little more contrast.
In that area, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good point. I haven't quite finished with the sky because I got some blending to do here, but yeah, that's
Okay.
I could put a bit of let's just do it and see what. Let's just put some blue there.
That was it.
Okay, but that I'm not going to leave it like that. See, now if I do that, you see, I've got to connect it. It's got to have a connection to the rest of the sky somewhere. So I'm just going to let it taper off that way. And then big brush it a couple of times. Maybe I should name my technique as big brushing.
Maybe, Stuart, some of the red ochre reflected in the water somewhere.
That would be tricky at this stage. I might be able to. I'll have a go in a sec. I'll have a look.
Well, don't mess it up.
I'm getting to know voices now, even on Zoom. So thanks for that, Trevor.
Stuart,
Yep.
you talk about adding more detail in the foreground in paintings.
Adding
when you
more. Sorry.
detail in the foreground when things
Detail.
closer to us. Would it be appropriate to suggest some more detail in the left bottom that you have here?
Down here. Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, I'll do a bit of that. Yeah. What before I do that, I'm just going to just fiddle with that shadow a bit using the corner of this brush, just because I don't like that fact that it's just a hard line. So I'm just going to smooth that out a bit. In other words, disrupt the shape just a tad. So it sort of sits into the cloud rather than sitting on the cloud. That's the idea. All clouds are basically blends. They're blends of all the colors that you get in the sky. I think that might work. Yeah, I think I might leave. I'll probably leave the sky like that now. Trying to avoid the castle. Okay, right. So a bit of sort of pretend detail down the bottom there. You can do it in several ways. You can do it with palette knives, or you can do it with brushes. So I'll show you with a palette knife. So I could get some We can do something like that. It might work. I suppose it could. Yeah, why not? Or, funny enough, my preferred way is to use a dry palette knife and start pushing in thinnish lines.
That looks really good.
That's going to be a few rocks with a bit of foliage around it, I suppose.
That's interesting. I like that.
Stuart,
Yeah.
when you have a moment, what I'll call the narrows, about midway between the two cliff sides, you've got a glob of white next to the land there, and then blue next to it.
There.
To your left. Yeah, right in that area there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's a bit weird, isn't it? Let's see
Yeah,
what
it has. You have an apparent drop in the landscape, where from the horizon down to the foreground, you've got a significant, to me, drop of water, which is nice.
It's almost like a staircase of water, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, or a waterfall almost.
I'm going to disrupt that a little bit.
I said waterfall.
What I especially like on this painting is the number of triangular shapes you've put in here that focuses the eye where you want it to go.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that too, Richard.
It's all tricks. Think of the Wizard of Oz.
But you're standing in front of the curtain, not behind it.
Oh yes, smoke and mirrors. I'll tell you what, I'm going to do something very important to a bit of the cliff. Here we go. Ready? I'm being facetious, of course. There we are. It's just that nobody's seen my back for a long time. All I did was add that. I'm really working on the keeping my back out of the picture. Yep, I think that may be the limit today. Oh, don't like that. It's a tiny little thing, but I just don't like it. And just that weird little bit of white blob. So let's just change the shape. There we are.
What if you brought the water on off the canvas?
Oh, what, right down here?
Yeah.
Could do.
That would be interesting, Stuart. You've never done one like that.
I know. The reason I don't is because there's always this thing in my mind about people following it off the painting. You know, I like to contain people in the picture and
oh, okay.
Them interesting enough to keep them in. I mean, because it could be, you know, it's not a river, it's just the sea, I suppose, and it just has to end there because we're on a cliff.
Yeah. Okay.
And Stuart, I would love to see a video of waves. I have huge trouble with waves close to the shore.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, the type of wave I do aren't difficult. In fact, if I can get across here, this is one did I do this in a lesson? I'm not sure. That one, it's not finished yet.
Yes.
But
yes.
This sort of effect here, it's just the same as that, ironing back and forth with a palette knife. It's very hard to not get the effect, but this needs work on. So I should do some more lessons that are, you know, me finishing off stuff. If I don't, I won't be able to get in the room. I'll put it that way. Okay, I see something else I don't like. Well, it's not that I don't like it. I just something I just want to change, and that's just a little bit of no, that didn't work. Let's try again. Right, what I'm trying to do is just to get a little highlight of water. There. That's better. That's it. Right, done. Okay, so feel free to unmute.
Stuart, just one thing if I might. Below the castle,
yeah,
got a white on the rock that bulges out, and from the picture it looks a little bit like the front of either the engine.
Oh, that,
Sorry. Yeah, it looked no further down. No further down. There's a white line comes down. You've got a bulge like the front of either the engine.
I sort of see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. In fact, tell you what, I put that stick thing sticking out because quite often in medieval castles like that, they would have a structure sticking out so that they could lift stuff up, on a rope. But
It's the white wiggly line below it, the little white line that the
line.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that maybe that's a little bit strange. Let's just break it there. That's better.
There, done.
But the other thing they have this piece of wood sticking out for, of course, is to string up anyone they didn't like. So,
Right.
the good old days, eh? Right. I just want to if I can keep my hands steady.
No, I like the days of toilets and running water.
Yeah. Sort of interesting. Anyway, yeah. There's so much for the good old days. Just try going to the dentist 200 years ago. That will put you right off. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to stop the recording and then chat away, and I'll take a photograph, which I hope will be okay. Let's try that. So.